Hey there, true crime fans. Welcome back to For Criming Out Loud and our bedtime series called Crime Me to Sleep. We've been reading While Idaho Slept, and this is the 4th episode. So if you're new here, make sure you subscribe. That way you can go into the playlists and start any book we've covered from the very beginning. Let's get into episode 4 of While Idaho Slept. Part 3, Chapter 13. Kaylee Gonzalez was born in the San Francisco Bay Area town of Concord, California, in June of 2001. She had thick, curly black hair at birth and a small scar of unknown origin on her forehead, which had puzzled her doctors. During her childhood, long after the Gonzalez family had moved to North Idaho, her siblings would tease Kaylee about the scar. That's where horns tried to grow in, they would say. In Coeur d'Alene, the family lived in a 7-bedroom home on a tree-lined street near the Alvista Utility Company, which provided the city's natural gas and electric services. It was a suburban neighborhood with beautiful, massive Lake Coeur d'Alene nearby, its waters so overwhelmingly blue they almost seemed fake. Later, the Gonzalezes moved to neighboring Rathdrum, 13 miles away, but still in the Coeur d'Alene School District. On nearly 7 acres of pasture and woods, the 6-bedroom house was lovely and welcoming. It had hardwood floors and crown molding, a large shop and deck, and a storybook white fence. Kaylee was the middle of 5 children, and like many in the middle, she had an adventurous streak that kept her family on its toes. With a sociable nature and a goofy sense of humor, she easily brought people into her orbit from the time she was very little. She went to Bora Elementary School in Coeur d'Alene, where her kindergarten teacher, Mrs. M., remembers her as one of the most joyful members of their small class. She was always moving and having fun and just full of life, her teacher says, recalling the little girl's tiny pigtails that would bounce when she walked. Kaylee, she says, was friendly to boys and girls alike, always fair. She smiled constantly and enjoyed learning. Mrs. M. had known Kaylee's whole family well, Coeur d'Alene being what it is, small in a good way, and the Gonzalezes were good people, she says. She felt closer to them than she did to many parents. When Mrs. M. found out what had happened to Kaylee, she was devastated. Now, she says, I just feel so much for the family. Even months after learning of Kaylee's murder, she choked up while speaking of it, a catch in her voice as she adds, I don't know what you say to someone whose child has been murdered. Others in Kaylee's life remember her effervescence dovetailing with a love of mischief. At just 3, Kaylee removed the batteries from her grandfather's beloved TV remote, then sat on the couch and grinned as he ranted about it suddenly not working. Kaylee's sister, Olivia, noted at her memorial. Their grandfather called Kaylee K-Bug because of her constant, playful annoying of him. Her reputation with the rest of the family was similar, said Olivia. They saw her as a good-natured pain in the butt. By junior high, Kaylee was attending the Coeur d'Alene Charter Academy, a top-tier Idaho public charter school for grades 6 through 12. The school was academically rigorous, boasting the highest SAT scores in the state, nearly 300 points above the average Idaho score. Founded by a conservative Republican who emphasized a personal work ethic along with academics, the academy required uniforms and prohibited clothing or accessories that are worn with the obvious intent of being different or unique. It was a cultural fit for the area, if not a great one for fashion-conscious, free-spirited Kaylee, who loved designer clothes. Even the art department emphasized rigor over creativity, citing in the course catalog the program's focus on the academics of drawing and design, media and techniques, art criticism and aesthetics, and art history. It was a lot to swallow for the average junior high student. But if Kaylee had her issues with the school, her social life wasn't one of them. Her best friend, Maddie Mogan, was there with her, and that was everything. From the moment Kaylee and Maddie met at the academy in 6th grade, they were inseparable. In a photograph from the time, the two girls stand on the back deck at the Gonzalez family home, the corner of a school backpack just squeezing into the bottom of the frame. They wear matching khaki skirts with clean waistlines and blended buttons. They cock their hips, smiling at the camera. Sunlight shines on the sage-colored plank siding of the house behind them and on the white sashes. They might weigh 90 pounds apiece. Maddie's long blonde hair is clipped to one side. Kaylee's brown hair now has artificially blonde streaks. Their collared uniform shirts are tucked in crisply in the style of their school. Their canvas tennis shoes are equally cared for, Maddie's purple, Kaylee's white, each with bleach white shoestrings perfectly tied. They wear bracelets on their wrists. Maddie chews gum. Kaylee has braces. Chapter 14. Kaylee loved it when Maddie became a staple at the Gonzalez family home. The two did their homework together, and in 8th grade, according to family, they conspired to change schools together. They were ready for a bigger, more varied experience. They wrote up a proposal for their transfer to a regular public school and presented it to their families. A year later, they were enrolled at Coeur d'Alene's Lake City High, home of the Timberwolves, in fashion freedom. After their murders, teachers at Lake City shared some of their memories of the girls, whom most viewed as a single unit. Donna Staub, one of their English teachers, remembers, "The two of them is a hyphenated phrase, Kaylee and Madison." On the first day of school, as others were quietly finding their seats in Staub's class, the door opened again, and Kaylee and Maddie walked in last, glowing. Staub recalls fondly that the two girls would often arrive, just a whisper under the late bell, with an iced drink in their hands, always laughing, always ready to learn. Kaylee, she remembers, had often tried to read more challenging books than her friends. In an autobiography assignment, Kaylee had also confessed that one of her favorite Christmas gifts had been the entire box set of the Bobbsey twin books, in which the protagonists embark on wild adventures and solve mysteries along the way. She had a propensity for mystery solving herself. As she got older, Kaylee became a true crime follower, listening to podcasts about the missing and murdered. She paid such close attention to local cases that she had even once called the Moscow police to report that she had seen someone she thought might be a missing Coeur d'Alene woman at the Walmart near the University of Idaho campus. Sergeant Dustin Blaker, one of the officers who would later become an investigator on Kaylee's murder case, had spoken to her over the phone. Kaylee reported that she had seen 62-year-old Sharon Archer, whom she recognized from a missing persons flyer, staring at her and her boyfriend Jack as they shopped. She sent a photo of the flyer to Blaker, hoping he could investigate, but the woman was no longer inside the Walmart by the time police could respond. 3 weeks later, Sharon Archer was found, drowned in 400-acre Freenan Lake in the mountains between Moscow and Coeur d'Alene. One of Kaylee's favorite true crime commentators was TikToker and YouTuber Olivia Vital. Kaylee followed her cases closely, according to Steve Gonzalez, and when Steve was reeling with his own loss and grasping for answers about Kaylee's murder, he reached out to Vital for help in raising awareness and gathering leads. Gonsalves thought Kaylee and Maddie would have appreciated that. Citizen sleuthing was right up the Bobbsey twins' alley. The expression thick as thieves comes to mind, says the girls' Lake City High speech teacher, Todd Jasmine, who admired the girls' energy and bright spirits. They complimented each other well. They also knew how to push each other's buttons and could be fairly brutal in their smack talk to each other. But mostly they just looked out for one another and would fiercely defend one another should smack talk come from anyone else. Another of their English teachers, Madison Seymour, remembered how helpful the girls had been during her formative time as an instructor. "I was new to the profession and just trying to figure out how to be a good teacher," Seymour said in an online tribute. "I know I made mistakes along the way, but Maddie and Kaylee were always supportive and positive. The encouragement I received from them made my job so much easier." Seymour had graduated from the University of Idaho, where the girls would die a few years after being in her class. Kaylee, she had thought, was going to take the world by storm. Outside their high school after graduating, Kaylee and Maddie posed for a photograph together on a green lawn. They both wore white dresses beneath their purple graduation robes. Kaylee held a bouquet of flowers, pink, the color Maddie favored. They stood so close that their heads were touching. Kaylee's older sister, Olivia, was pregnant at the time of Kaylee's murder. By late February, new life would come into the family. It was a blessing and a balm, but nothing could make up for the hole in Olivia's life. She felt she had lost not just one sister, but two. The girls had always been together. Maddie had seemed as much a part of the Gonsalves family as Kaylee had been. Olivia gave her daughter the middle name Maddie Kay, the girls' names interfused, as everyone had always thought of them. And not long after the murders, Kaylee's younger teenage sister, Autumn, made a TikTok video of herself crying, devastated by her big sister's absence. The video almost immediately amassed 3 million views. With no arrest yet, Autumn also posted to her social media, urging U of I parents to bring their children home from school early. "If you have friends, family, or loved ones in Moscow, our family encourages you to get them home," she had written. "No one is in custody, therefore no one is safe." Implicit in her impassioned pleas was an unanswerable question. How could this have happened to people she loved? Kaylee and Maddie hadn't been careless in their lives. They went out together, they locked their doors, Autumn said, and they were surrounded by friends. "My sisters did everything right," she posted. On Instagram, she recounted the gut-wrenching interaction that no family imagines. "Maddie, I keep replaying the moment the police officer knocked on our door. At that time, we had heard that Kaylee had passed away, but we refused to believe it until we heard it from a police officer," she wrote. "I was blowing up your phone, begging you to let me know Kaylee was okay, having zero idea that you weren't." When the officer mentioned the 3 other victims, she immediately knew something terrible had happened to Maddie as well. Her family was shattered all over again. "I love you two forever," she wrote to her sisters in the heavens. And to her followers, she wrote pretty simply, "Tell your people you love them." Chapter 15. Kaylee was excited to go to college with her best friend. They'd eventually lived together, but somewhat surprisingly joined different sororities to broaden their experiences. Maddie pledged with Pi Beta Phi, while Kaylee pledged Alpha Phi. Both were party houses, and both sororities were soon on probation for what the University of Idaho considered violations or concerns regarding risk management, alcohol/drugs, or hazing. Both sororities were full of girls who looked like Kaylee and Maddie, long hair falling in golden waves over smooth shoulders, straight teeth gleaming in the sun. In the Instagram photos everyone posted, the girls all had smiles that spoke 1,000 words about the futures ahead of them. Kaylee's high spirits made themselves known in her sorority. She had a contagious laugh and liked playing pranks on her sisters in the house. She was always up for an adventure and always inclusive. She was nice, she was free-spirited, and she was always down to do something, Olivia, a little in Kaylee's sorority, says about her. Olivia shared a name, although spelled differently, with Kaylee's real sister. Littles were newcomers to the sorority system, and Kaylee was a big by the time Olivia, a freshman at the university in 2022, met her. They hadn't interacted much, but Kaylee's warming presence had felt comforting to Olivia in her first months away from home. Everyone's memories seemed to have this in common. Kaylee was a girl who was a plain good to be around. To live like Kaylee, another of Kaylee's sorority sisters said on Instagram just a week after her murder, would be the biggest accomplishment. Both Maddie and Kaylee thrived in the Greek social system, and their early education had prepared them to thrive in academics as well. Kaylee studied in the College of Letters, Arts, and Social Sciences, and her work ethic soon put her on track to graduate early. And there was Jack DeCoeur to keep Kaylee busy romantically. They'd begun dating in high school, had gone to their senior prom together. The two of them had been so young when they'd met and were still young, but in a different way. Occasionally, they broke up, then they got back together. When Kaylee and Maddie moved into the King Road house in the same neighborhood as Jack, Kaylee took the room right across from Maddie's on the 3rd floor. Like the floor beneath them, theirs had a sliding glass door leading onto a wood-framed deck where Kaylee's dog could lie in the sun outside or even inside where sunlight filtered through the glass and across his fur. There were no outdoor stairs from the 3rd floor deck to the ground level. If there had ever been a fire inside the house, the girls on the 3rd floor would have had to jump. Kaylee's bedroom was decorated with plants and photographs of her friends and family. She had made the room feel homey and had recorded TikToks there with Murphy, holding his paws to the camera while he smiled along with her. Soon after the girls moved in, 22-year-old U of I student Matthew Moy took notice of their frequent parties and the loud country music often playing from a speaker on the 2nd floor patio. Matthew lived in another house just up the bluff, 50 yards behind the King Road residence. From his vantage up high, it seemed that the King Road girls made having fun a priority, something he could understand. In good weather, Matthew, too, sometimes blared his music from the house while he sunbathed on the deck. Many people in the neighborhood did. Once he called a noise complaint to the police, but not out of spite, he says, only because he had to get up early the next day and he wouldn't be able to sleep until the music at 1122 was turned down. He met Kaylee more personally while he was taking care of his brother's dog, Bodie. Kaylee's Murphy would run up the hill behind the King Road house and squeeze through a gap in the chain-link fence. The two dogs would play in Matthew's yard, chasing and tumbling. Matthew developed a friendly acquaintanceship with Kaylee. Sometimes they'd run into each other while walking the dogs. He thought she seemed mature and sweet. When he first heard what happened to her, he was shocked and disbelieving. No way in hell it was a murder, he had first thought. This is Moscow, Idaho. No way. He and his roommate suspected the deaths were drug-related. Like fentanyl, he says, that's been happening a lot lately. As the truth sunk in, he and his roommates thought, holy shit. Matthew began to suffer from nightmares. It was scary living in a home so close to where the murders had occurred, and with a killer still on the loose. To assuage their fears, he and his roommates got a security system installed in their house. We were pretty paranoid for a little bit, he says. After a while, his roommates, one of whom was his sister, also a student at U of I, began to relax, but the violent loss of lives still seemed unreal to him. It will never compute to me that actually happened. It's just hard to fathom, he says. Then he adds, I think about them often. By spring, Matthew would graduate. He had a plan to join the Air Force. He would move into adult life, live somewhere else, tackle a new job, get a car. Kaylee had been planning the same. In Austin, she would have worked for an IT firm. She had bought a pre-owned Range Rover SUV with a bank loan and moved out of the King Road residence early, excited to graduate in December. She'd be leaving Jack and even Maddie behind. She had come back only for that weekend in November to attend a party and to show Maddie her new ride, so freshly purchased it didn't have plates yet. She had parked the vehicle in front of their house. The Rover was silver and sleek and had tires good enough to take her across the world. It was still sitting there 3 weeks later, covered in ice. Chapter 16. The cops first came to 1122 King Road and met Kaylee in August, well before the murders, when the weather in Moscow was beautiful, low 80s and the sun shining. After a slow summer, the sounds of campus coming to life were starting up again. The low-level melody of footsteps and car doors opening and grocery bags hoisted from Subaru trunks drifted on the breeze. Down the street at 1127 King Road that day, another group of students was throwing a small outdoor party. There were students on the rooftop drinking beer in the sunshine, while others sat in lawn chairs on the pavement or wandered from the back of the house with red Solo cups. Rap music played from a speaker until the cops came. Then the music was quickly turned down, and body cam footage from the incident shows a male officer from the Moscow PD climbing the driveway to speak with the house's tenants. The officer looked freshly groomed with a tight and high haircut. He stood in the driveway with his left hand on his hip-fastened gear, while 3 young men in t-shirts and ball caps approached him. The rest of the outdoor partygoers had turned their eyes to the officer, too. One young man on the roof squatted on his haunches, staring down. Dappled sunlight filtered through the trees on a small hillside behind him. The officer explained to the 3 young men that neighbors had complained of noise. He issued a verbal warning and told them that tickets for a noise violation could be expensive. Spend the money on beer instead, he said, before fist-bumping one of them goodbye. Then the officer and his partner walked around the corner and uphill to 1122 King Road, their shadows progressing 10 feet in front of their body cams. The date was August 16th, 2022, some 3 months before the murders, and 6 days before classes were to resume for the 2022-23 school year. It was approximately 5:30 p.m. when the sun still burns hot in Idaho. You could almost hear the heat and the heaviness of the officer's breathing. They climbed 1122's sloped driveway, where 5 vehicles were parked. A young man leaned out the window of what would have been Kaylee's 3rd-floor bedroom, and 2 other students alongside the house wandered away from the police as they approached. "Hey guys," one officer called to them. "Can you send someone out who lives here, please?" One of the young men initially ignored him, staring down at a golf ball in his hand while continuing to walk away, but the officer corralled him. The body cam footage then cut to the second officer walking along the side of 1122 King Road, through tall summer weeds, climbing slightly uphill to the 2nd-floor patio, where his partner was questioning a young man in khaki shorts, a blue polo, and a white beaded necklace like people just back from the Caribbean or Mardi Gras wear. This was Hunter Johnson, Ethan Chapin's best friend. An old couch, a dome-shaped barbecue with a lid off, and a portable table holding a stack of red beer cups sat on the concrete patio. At the direction of the officer, Hunter went back through the slider to find a legal tenant. A few minutes later, Kaylee Gonzalez came outside, tan, in a burnt orange dress, with Hunter steps behind. Hunter gently closed the slider behind him, shutting in the small party that continued inside, only quieter now. "Hi, guys," Kaylee said, greeting the two officers like she would any other pair of men at her house. "Do you know why we're here?" one officer asked. I assume noise?" She appeared sober, almost businesslike, hands moving to her hips the way a homeowner might stand while awaiting a contractor's bid. "Lay it on me, what's the damage?" "Noise, yeah," the officer said. Hunter sat down on the patio couch, a beat-up Curb Alert special that months later would be covered in snow, photographed by the press and analyzed by citizen sleuths. "Nothing against having a party," the officer said, "but once the neighbors start calling—" "Fair," Kaylee said, knowing the right thing to say and the right time to say it. You in school?" the officer continued. "Yeah," Kaylee said. "What year?" "Senior," she said confidently, the way seniors do. The police officer gave her a verbal warning and explained that a $300 ticket was the next step, should he have to come back. "I'd much rather you spend that $300 on beer or something fun," he added, his usual refrain. A guy who understood, not much older than Kaylee. On his notepad, he took down Kaylee's contact information. In the distance was the University of Idaho water tower peeking out above a tree line, the neighborhood between Kaylee and the campus squatting low in the sun. There were handprints all over the sliding glass door. Hunter and then Kaylee went back inside, where the living room had its Good Vibes neon sign in cloud-white cursive, like the one in Maddie's bedroom, and where the friends of Kaylee, Maddie, Xana, and Ethan kept drinking in the kitchen that would later become photographed by those who had come to see the murder house through its double-pane windows. Behind the two cops, the yard was fully overgrown, with knee-high mountain weeds standing upright in the early evening heat. Chapter 17. But that was before everything ended for Kaylee, and long before most people in the world knew Kaylee's name or the measure of joy she had brought to those she loved. At a candlelight vigil held on November 30th at the university in honor of Kaylee, Maddie, Xana, and Ethan, Kaylee's parents spoke to a large crowd of students touched by the murders. Steve Gonzalez wrung his hands in front of the microphone on a slim podium. "I hope to be able to make you laugh, but I'm afraid we're going to have to cry," he began. He told the audience that in preparing his remarks, a task he seemed unpracticed at, he had prayed to the heavens and used Google as a backup. He had looked up the 7 wonders of the world and decided there should be an 8th, the relationship between a father and his daughter. "That is pretty wonderful," he told the audience and quipped. "You start wondering the minute they put that baby in your hand, wondering what you're going to do, and you wonder how you're going to feed them and how you're going to take care of them." Fatherhood hadn't been easy at first. There'd been a learning curve, but he had dug in hard finally. You start seeing the world through the girl's eyes, and as a father, it's a little bit scary. On a local network streaming the vigil, photographs of Kaylee intermittently populated the screen. Kaylee frolicking in the autumn leaves, wearing ripped blue jeans and a floppy hat. The world starts having like this purple haze, he says, describing the rolling years of parenting a young girl. Raising Kaylee's brother had been familiar to him, but girls were altogether different. And there's puppies and there's kittens and there's weird movies you have to watch, and they start crying all the time, he added. But you start falling in love with this world that they built. You see this world, and you don't have pickup trucks and all these footballs. You start seeing the beauty of what they have and what makes them special. Kaylee was on the screen again, the sun in her hair. Gonzalez continued through sniffles, fumbling a few jokes while his wife, Christy, standing by his side, corrected him. He looked like a man proud of his strength, but now vulnerable. In 6th grade, they just found each other, he said of his daughter and Maddie. And they came here together, and in the end, they died together. He drove his open hand into the podium for effect. In the same room, in the same bed, he said. And it's a shame and it hurts, but the beauty of the two always being together is something that comforts us. He told a large crowd of students how he thought they could heal. There's pain everywhere. You're just going to have to love each other. You guys are just going to have to hug each other. You're going to have to be a little awkward. The only cure to pain is love. It's the only thing that's going to heal us. It's the only thing that's going to heal you. A man in the audience kissed the head of a woman beside him, his arm around the shoulder of her winter jacket. Over the next several weeks before a suspect had been found, Steve Gonzalez continued to take the Moscow PD to task, on camera, demanding answers they weren't ready yet to provide. He was fighting for his girls. He would have jumped into his car and solved the case himself, found his daughter's murderer the way any father would want to, but without insider information, evidence, or even the thought processes of investigators, he felt robbed of the opportunity. He sat for interviews on Fox, Good Morning America, ABC, NBC, News Nation, and wherever else would have him, pleading for an internet-savvy public to help him find his daughter's killer. He looked good on camera, his Carhartt-style jacket and worn ball cap vibing all-American dad, and he was well-spoken. It's hard for me to give up, as a father, my protective ability to other men, he said on Fox, and people could relate. The case was certainly getting more international attention because of him, which was all any parent would care about in the wake of their child's murder. A killer on the loose, everybody had said, and Gonzalez could feel the perpetrator slipping away. What he knew for certain was very little. The time of death, the method, a hunting knife, the coroner had said, and that the Moscow PD had no person of interest in their sights. Gonzalez and his family made flyers, and they mailed thousands to area businesses and homes, asking people to check their outdoor garbage cans for discarded evidence, asking people for their security footage, asking for tips to be sent to the Moscow PD, asking for help plain and simple. Each night, Steve and Christy Gonzalez now went home to a family without Kaylee in it, a family that was heartbreakingly one person smaller than it had been just days before. No, 2 people. Maddie had felt like theirs also. That wraps up episode 4 of While Idaho Slept. If you enjoy this content, please make sure to hit that like button for me, subscribe, and click the notification bell so you don't miss the next one. You know, all the YouTube-y things. Also, if you'd like to reach out to me, you can contact me through my webpage at forcrimingoutloudshop.com. And while you're there, go ahead and take a look around. There's some pretty fun hoodies and things for true crime fans like us. Thank you guys so much for being here. I truly appreciate your support in this new series, Crime Me to Sleep. Till next time, good night.